Here are some facts and details of Batman Arkham Origins that you probably never knew. Comment down below with any Batman Arkham facts you know for the chance to be featured in the next video. Did you know that Arkham Asylum at one point could have been in Arkham Origins? By looking at previous versions of Arkham Origins, more specifically the February 1st, 2013 build, and type open Arkham Asylum, it will actually bring you to Arkham North, just outside of the intensive treatment facility. If we look around, we can see that there are still plenty of work needed to be done, with random body parts scattered around the map of guards and pink textures that are used a lot in game design for either textures that need to be replaced in future or objects that need to be hidden in the full release. This build gives us access to Arkham North, East and West, although there's a lot of jank to it, especially how Batman can easily fall through the ground at any given moment. What's interesting is that they must have had some sort of plan for Arkham Asylum to be involved in the story, as it being here is already a huge indicator, but also they seem to have changed some areas of the game, such as adding this giant radio tower. I'm not sure if WB Montreal meant to put this here, or it could be just a bug, as it does seem a little out of place for where it is. So maybe they planned to make small changes to the island to show what it looked like a few years before Joker's takeover. I wonder would the game have started or ended in Asylum, which at the time would have been abandoned due to Quincy Sharp only renovating the facility after the events of Origins. It's hard to gauge if Arkham Asylum was definitely going to be used though, as in the same build we can see that the intro stayed the exact same in the final build, starting off in Blackgate, and also the developers labelled the church in Blackgate as Joker's ending. It's still really cool to have access to these early builds, just to see what the developers were thinking during the process of the game, and how the final game differs from these previous builds. The Atom Smith does a long video on specifically this early build, so definitely check it out. Batman's Batmobile is an iconic vehicle and featured heavily in Batman Arkham Asylum and Arkham Knight, but three lesser known vehicles were apparently being worked on during the time of Arkham Origins. If we head to the Batcave, the same area where we get the glue grenade, we can find some blueprints for different tech that Batman is developing. The obvious one we can find is the blueprints for the Batwing, which already features in the game, so it's not that important. We actually do have blueprints for the Batmobile, but it's actually for the 1989 version, which was for Michael Keaton's movie. The next one, which is pretty cool, is a Batcycle, something similar to the Harley Davidson motorbike, which looks really cool, and I would have loved this to be an optional vehicle in Arkham Knight, as it would have given us a bit of variety where the bike could have been a lot faster and more mobile. The fourth vehicle, which seems like a joke vehicle, is some sort of bat scooter that I'd love to know if Arkham Batman actually used at one point, because I don't know how criminals would have reacted to this, as it's not really that intimidating seeing Batman speeding along on a scooter, but that's my opinion. The fifth vehicle, which is a bit goofy but makes a bit more sense than a scooter, is a bat hovercraft for traversing the Gotham River, which would have been really cool to see in something like Arkham Knight or even Arkham Asylum around the island, so that Batman could drive around on the water, which the Batmobile obviously can't do. Thanks to Mr. Jag for letting me use the textures he found. Did you know that there was multiple suits cut from Batman Arkham Origins? I spoke before about how Warner Brothers Montreal planned to have the worst nightmare skin that was meant to show what Batman looked like to criminals, but had to be removed due to apparently corrupting save data. But in the prototype version of Arkham Origins, we can actually see that there was another suit that was cut before release. If we go to the Batcave and to the chamber where the suits are stored, we can find two suits, one of them being the worst nightmare suit, and the other is actually from the 2007 pre-alpha build of Batman Arkham Asylum, where we see a much slimmer body, long ears on the cowl, and a shorter cape. To be honest, it's a pretty weird design for Batman, and I presume he would have fitted the aesthetic of the 2007 build at that time, and probably would have gotten a bit of polishing to tidy up the overall look, but I'm definitely happier with the style that they went for the 2009 build, the actual release version of Batman. Now, Warner Brothers Montreal never specified if this skin was actually going to feature in the release, but I think it would have been really cool to have this skin a officially playable without the use of mods, and it would be a nice callback to all the work that Rocksteady put into the original game and see how far the franchise has come since then. But let me know what you think. A criminal that was first created in one of the best episodes of the Batman animated series, Feet of Clay, is referenced in Batman Arkham Origins. The headline of a newspaper that mentions this character does appear in different areas, but the easiest place we can find it is the Batcave. If we go left of the Batcomputer, we can see a bunch of newspaper snippets. If we look closely, there's one titled Daggett Industries under investigation. If you didn't know, Daggett Industries is owned by Ronald Daggett, the person who is responsible for the creation of Renew You, a cream that causes flesh to be melted and molded like clay, which he gave to Matt Hagen, the second Clayface. It's a shame he hasn't been featured more in the Arkham series, as I feel like a Clayface DLC similar to the Cold Cold Heart DLC could work really well. Batman has many disguises for his undercover work, one of them being Matches Malone that we saw in Batman Arkham Shadow, but in Arkham Origins we actually hear that Batman has used others previously. When we're in the final offer at the early stages, we can find a group of henchmen chatting about Batman. In the conversation they actually mention Lefty Knox, who's a disguise for Batman that has a hook as a replacement for his right hand.
Serious? I thought he was like a urban myth.
Oh, he's real enough. Just ask Mickey.
Mickey?
You know, Lefty.
Lefty? Oh, Lefty.
Batman Arkham Origins DLC A Cold Cold Heart was heavily inspired by the Batman animated series episode Heart of Ice, and one of the best scenes from that episode is when Mr. Freeze is defeated, sitting in his cell in Arkham Asylum as Batman watches over. In Mr. Freeze's hand he holds a snow globe, and we can actually find the snow globe in the DLC if we go to the lab he used in Gothcorp. When we enter the room and walk up to the desk, we can see there is a snow globe. Now it is quite different to the one that we saw in the Batman animated series, but I still think it's a really cool nod that is shown here. Sticking with Gothcorp, we can find a reference to a character who's not yet turned to a life of crime. When we first enter the Gothcorp building, at the reception desk we can find that there's a name tag for visitors, with the name Pamela Isley written on the name tag, who I'm sure most people know is Poison Ivy. It's pretty cool to see her referenced here, as she didn't make an appearance in Origins, so maybe this is a detail to show that Poison Ivy and Mr. Freeze worked together, or at least knew each other, but there's no other supporting evidence to prove this to be a fact. This Easter egg in Batman Arkham Origins took 4 years to find. A character that heavily featured in Batman Arkham Shadow was Lyle Bolton, that was one of the main people running Blackgate Prison and was captain for Tiger. He was actually referenced really early on in Origins during the breakout in Blackgate, when we have our first encounter with an enemy that is heavily armoured. If we use the debug camera and go to the floor above, which we cannot access without cheats, in this room we can find a file for Lyle Bolton, which is noted that it's Bolton's first interview, and that he's the chief of security, noting down his attributes as highly motivated and has a comprehensive knowledge of procedure. I do really like this Easter egg, although it is kinda confusing that this is the only location for this Easter egg that cannot be reached without mods, and it's not even here when we return to this location during Joker's Blackgate takeover. One of the coolest groups to come out of the comics in recent times is the Court of Owls, who only 2 years before Arkham Origins released were created, but made such a big impact that WB Montreal thought it would be a good idea to at least mention them twice during the game. The first time that the Court of Owls is referenced is actually on top of the Royal Hotel, the same place that Bane and Batman fight. If we look at the statues that are placed on top of the Royal Hotel, we can see that these are tributes to the Talons, who, if you didn't know, are basically the henchmen of the Court of Owls and will assassinate anyone who they feel goes against the court's ideology. We can find another reference when we go to stop Firefly from blowing up the bridge and killing the hostages. Once we enter the maintenance room and warn Gordon to call off his men, if we look left of the lift, we can find an open book which reads, "The Court of Owls watches all the time, ruling over Gotham from shadowed perch behind granite and lime. They watch you at your hearth, they watch you in your bed. Speak not a whisper word of them, or they'll send the talon for your head. I love these kind of Easter eggs, as I always wondered if the Court of Owls are watching over Batman during these games. I think it'd be really cool to see them as the main threat of a Batman Arkham game, but let me know what you think. During the events of the game, Batman goes up against 8 different assassins due to Black Mask putting a bounty on him, but did you know that there were multiple assassins that didn't make the cut? If we go back to Black Mask's office, the same place that Copperhead attacks us, we can see that there are multiple folders on the desk with different names attached to them. The first one being Cheshire, who's mainly a Teen Titans villain, who's pretty comparable to Copperhead, where she uses her poison to kill enemies, but is also a great martial artist similar to Shiva. The next assassin is Black Spider, who's very similar to Spider-Man, but the difference with Black Spider is that he uses guns and kills his enemies. This would be really cool to see Batman go up against Black Spider, especially if he had traversal like Spider-Man, and the mix between webs and guns would make for a fun boss fight. The last villain that was rejected was David Kane, who's probably one of the best assassins in DC Comics. David, a member of the League of Assassins, who in the comics was an early mentor to Bruce, and the father of Cassandra Cain, who we know goes on to be Batgirl. These 3 characters could have easily swapped in with the chosen assassins, so I wouldn't be surprised at one point that WB Montreal wanted to add them in, but decided against it and chose to just leave references to them. Comment down below what your favorite fact is. Let me know if there's any facts that you would like to have featured in the next facts video. Be sure to like and subscribe. That's all for now. My name is Fo, and Salam.